So when you think about life on the Great Plains, you probably have a certain image in your head, right? Maybe nomadic hunters following the buffalo. But what if I told you there was a civilization here? One whose cities were built not just on the Earth, but as literal maps of the stars. This is the incredible story of the Pawnee, the star-born people, whose entire world was a direct reflection of the cosmos.
I mean, really think about that for a second. What if the very house you're in right now, the layout of your town, was a living map of the universe, shifting and aligning with the stars above?
For the Pawnee, this wasn't some philosophical idea or a metaphor. It was real. It was the actual blueprint for their society. They practiced what you could call celestial architecture, where every single home, every village was engineered to honor their sacred connection to the sky.
So to really understand the Pawnee, we can't start on the plains of Nebraska. We have to start by looking up into the night sky. You see, they believed they were literally born from the stars, and they designed their entire world to mirror that sacred bond.
Okay, so at the very heart of their universe on Earth was the Earth Lodge. And let me tell you, this was not just a house. It was a living observatory. The big domed roof, that was the sky. The floor was the earth. And that smoke hole at the very top was seen as the eye of their creator, Tirawa, looking down on them. And get this, the entrance always faced east, perfectly aligned to greet the rising of the morning star.
Their spiritual world was just as elegantly structured. And at its core was this powerful cosmic tension. On one hand, you had the morning star, a male warrior god linked to the planet Mars, a force of conflict that demanded sacrifice. And on the other, you had the evening star, a female mother goddess, connected to Venus, who is the source of all life, fertility, and the sacred seeds. This cosmic drama shaped literally everything.
And look at this. This is the Skidi Star Chart, an absolutely incredible artifact painted on elk skin. And as the quote says, this wasn't something you'd use to find your way on land. No, this was a theological diagram of the entire universe. It was their sacred map, showing where the gods lived and the path our spirits take.
Now, this cosmic duality led to their most controversial ritual, the Morning Star Ceremony, which at certain times in their history involved human sacrifice to that warrior god. But then, in 1817, a warrior named Pateleshero stood up, defied the priests, and rescued a captive. This act sparked a huge internal debate. Was it more important to follow ancient cosmic tradition, or was it time to adapt in order to survive?
And make no mistake, this complex, stargazing society wasn't isolated. For centuries, the Pawnee were the dominant power on the Central Plains. They were the gatekeepers of trade and a military force so formidable that even European empires learned to fear them. And if you need proof of that dominance, look no further than the Villazor expedition. In 1720, the Spanish Empire sent an army north to see what the French were up to. Well, the Pawnee and their allies were waiting. They ambushed the Spanish camp at dawn, and in a matter of minutes, the entire invasion force was wiped out. A single battle that stopped the northward expansion of an empire dead in its tracks. But the 19th century brought a perfect storm of crises. The Pawnee found themselves caught in what historians call the Great Compression. They were literally being squeezed from all sides. You had expanding American settlement pushing from the east and aggressive, newly armed rivals like the Sioux pushing from the west. To put this in perspective, at the dawn of the 19th century, the Pawnee were at the absolute height of their power. Their nation was strong, with over 10,000 people living in these huge, permanent Earth Lodge villages all along the rivers of Nebraska. But just a few decades later, that number completely collapsed to fewer than 4,000. The very thing that made them so strong, their large, concentrated villages, also made them incredibly vulnerable to the devastating epidemics of smallpox and cholera that just tore through the plains. Weakened by disease and under constant attack, they were forced into one treaty after another, giving up huge chunks of their ancestral homeland, until, by 1857, the entire Pawnee Nation was trapped on a small reservation, completely surrounded by their enemies. So, facing total annihilation, the Pawnee made an absolutely brilliant strategic move. They allied themselves with the United States Army. Now, this was not an act of submission. You have to understand this was a sovereign act of war. They were using the U.S. military as a powerful new weapon against their mortal enemies, especially the Sioux.
And the legendary Pawnee Scouts became the U.S. Army's elite special forces. Their crowning achievement, the Battle of Summit Springs in 1869. They tracked the feared Cheyenne dog soldiers for hundreds of miles, they found their hidden village, and then they personally led the charge that wiped out the resistance. They were so effective, the Sioux came to fear the Pawnee Wolves far more than any U.S. cavalrymen.
But even this loyalty, this incredible skill, couldn't protect them in the end. The next chapter of their story is one of unimaginable trauma, but it also holds the seeds, both literally and figuratively, of their eventual rebirth.
On August 5, 1873, a Pawnee hunting party, made up of mostly women and children, was on a hunt that was sanctioned by the U.S. government. They were ambushed by a massive Sioux war party of over 1,000 warriors. In what became known as Massacre Canyon, up to 150 Pawnee were slaughtered. The event completely broke the tribe's spirit. They realized their supposed ally, the U.S. government, either couldn't or wouldn't protect them. It led to the agonizing decision to leave their Nebraska homeland forever.
By the year 1900, only about 600 Pawnee were left. They had been forced onto a reservation in Oklahoma. Their sacred ceremonies were banned. Their children were taken away to boarding schools. Their entire star-born world seemed lost. So it raises this profound question. After all of that, how does a nation even begin to come home?
Well, they did it by fighting back with new tools. They used modern laws to reclaim the remains of thousands of their ancestors from museums. They established their own college to save their language from extinction. In 2021, they ratified a new constitution, asserting their full inherent sovereignty. But the most powerful story of all is the return of their seeds.
You see, decades ago, tribal members noticed that their sacred corn varieties just weren't growing well in Oklahoma's soil. So they started a project to send them back home, to be grown in their ancestral soil in Nebraska, and they thrived. This isn't just farming. As one project leader put it so beautifully, it's rematriation, a deeply spiritual act of bringing their living relatives, the seeds, back home to the motherland.
From building their homes to mirror the stars, to bringing their sacred corn back to ancestral soil, the Pawnee story is one of profound, unbroken connection. It's a full circle of resilience. And it leaves us with one final thought to ponder. What does it truly mean to bring a culture's living relatives home?